Hi, thanks for joining me. Today I want to talk about Beyond Two Souls. This is a game that I beat last night, and just one playthrough on it. But I'm trying to sort my thoughts out about it this morning, so I just wanted to kind of share those with you guys to help me figure out how I feel about the game. My friend rented it last weekend. We were hanging out, and we were talking about it. He's like, I played the demo, and he didn't really get it. And I kind of told him, I was like, I've played some other Quantic Dreams stuff before, and it's essentially a interactive story. You want to be expecting like a visual novel almost. And he was like, oh, okay, all right. He's like, well, in that case, you might like it. So we tried it out, and I guess I'm kind of maybe a bad Quantic Dreams David Cage fan, so to speak, because I think I'm really down with what it is that he's trying to do, sort of what their vision has been since Omicron the Nomad Soul on the Dreamcast and Indigo Prophecy on the Xbox. I played those games, but I didn't play a lot of them. And Heavy Rain seemed really interesting. I just played a little bit of it also. So something about those games I was completely intrigued by, but somehow not enough to finish the games. So this being the first of those games that I've actually played to finish, maybe that's kind of telling. Maybe this is kind of the best of these experiments that they've done so far, because I really found it to be accessible and was able to play it from start to finish. But it was when we were first trying it out, we were kind of razzing it a little bit. We were giving it some crap because it's a little hard to tell, and I guess I'm not really going to call it story-based, but more of these experience-based, media that we're kind of experiencing. It's a little bit hard to tell, sort of what your agency is and what the rules of the world are, because you're given a set of sort of kind of interactions and abilities that, especially in this game, I think you might associate with some other kinds of games even. So you end up with the ability to move your character around. You can definitely interact with objects and sort of sit down on certain things and do that kind of stuff. But you also have this other entity, Aiden, who's linked to you. It's like some sort of a spirit, and you can go into Aiden, and you can also move around and do stuff. So that's interesting. But I think you go through a whole bunch of things at the beginning, and we're kind of like, are we still in the tutorial? Have we gotten to the real game, the full game yet? There's some tension between the story and what you can do, and I think I've said those very same words about another game not so long ago. If you'll remember my impressions of The Last of Us, that has the same issue, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. The Last of Us and this game really exist in the same space. They're kind of the same game, and they're experimenting with the same things right now. But anyway, so with Aiden, I think you're able to do some interesting things. I think one of the most interesting it does involve the story. So I think in a lot of games where you have this kind of mechanic, you could expect to be able to do it to, kind of like for reconnaissance and go flip a switch and go kind of use it tactically, and you actually do that in this game. But I feel like that's secondary to maybe being able to interact with Aiden as an actor, as like a character in this story. And you can really make Aiden kind of evil or kind of not. It's interesting. I read a review where somebody was complaining about how, and then you can do, there's nothing you can do with them other than kill this character, and it makes the scene like whatever. And they're totally wrong, because I played that same scene and I didn't kill that character. So you do have some ability to kind of control, like, how do I think of Aiden? Is Aiden kind of, a little bit sinister? Is Aiden kind of good? Is Aiden a protector? Is Aiden a tormentor? which is interesting. I don't think these flavors really come out until you've played the game a bit. But another thing that I think is maybe the strongest part is sometimes you'll take these sort of mundane scenes, and Aiden can just sort of go into another room and listen to a conversation, and in that sense, it enriches the story, and you sort of learn more about the characters and what's going on, maybe Jody or other characters, and it's a neat mechanic. But really, I think, I guess maybe going back to the Last of Us, with The Last of Us, part of what I was saying is the gameplay really feels sort of tacked on. And in some ways, I felt like it might have been a little more honest if it had been, it's sort of this big linear, kind of Hollywood blockbuster-y, like a lot of sort of visually interesting spectacle scenes and stuff like that. And just this thing that you're kind of being taken along, but it felt a little fake. It was almost like you're just actors on a set and just playing out your roles. I felt like maybe if you took that third-person action game and chucked it out the window, it might have been a little bit more of an honest game, and I think that's what Beyond Two Souls is. It's a slightly more honest version of The Last of Us. And another review that I read, I tried not to read a lot of reviews of this, but I just read a couple. They're making an interesting point, though, where I think, Jody, your main character, and it's another interesting parallel is you have I think it's Ellen Page is the actress. You have her likeness in both of the games, one official and one less official, but a lot of parallels can be drawn between The Last of Us and Beyond Two Souls. But this review that I was reading, one of the criticisms that it had was that it's hard to identify with Jodie, and I agree with that. It's probably not until the last quarter or even the last fifth of the game that I think her personality really becomes sort of unified. You kind of, it all comes together. Because I think near the beginning of the game, we see her at kind of her most vulnerable. We really see like a scared adult, a scared child, and a scared adolescent. And you swap back and forth between these states and different time periods all the time, all throughout the game. It never stops doing that, which is a bit jarring. But you kind of see Jodie at her worst, I think, which is a hard way to identify with a character. I think you identify more with characters when you see them at their best, and they're kind of heroic, and you're like, oh, I'm playing this interesting character, but this heroic character, and then they're humanized a little bit. I think their flaws humanize them, and you go, okay, I can identify with them, because if they were too perfect, you wouldn't be able to identify with them at all. Jodie's kind of the opposite. She's sort of a mess. And it's only later in the game when you see her, heroicism or heroinism, and you really kind of get her, like the whole package kind of comes together, and you're like, she's pretty darn cool. You struggle with that a bit in the first half of the game. I think I would call it a failing of this narrative experience that we're going through. But yeah, so it reminds me of what are these games trying to do, like The Last of Us and Beyond Two Souls, and I think both of them they're looking at almost making this new sort of interactive narrative thing, and plenty. I mean, those waters have been tread before. People have done these things in the past, but I think what's a little bit different about what they're doing is kind of the amount of activity and passivity that you're engaged in, where, like, say you're watching a movie, showing my High School of the Dead colors here this morning, but you sort of sit back and you're just passively experiencing a story, a visual story. Things are going on, and you just watch it. And you might think about it, but that's all you do. It is passive. You're along for the ride. Now with like reading a book, maybe. It's the same sort of thing. I mean, it's linear. It's a story. I mean, it's maybe a little more active because you're maybe turning pages or swiping pages, and it engages your imagination. So you're thinking. A lot of stuff's going on up here. A visual novel, similarly, although you might have some pictures, almost like a picture book. So, Beyond Two Souls is more. It's aiming for like kind of a different kind of dynamic between the experiencer and the thing that you are experiencing. So I think, like a movie, they're trying to make something that they have complete control of the narrative. Maybe not complete, but you have maybe limited agency to choose some different things and make some different endings and things like that. And that's cool. That's very visual novelish. But unlike a visual novel where it's still pretty passive, they want you to, like, you're leaning in, you're holding a controller, and you have to be really engaged with what's going on through the whole game, because you're going to be tasked to move characters around, to do different things, hit different buttons, and you really need to be engaged in it. But unlike a lot of other games, you aren't really given this challenge. You're not really given this setting with rules within which to. I mean, in a limited sense, you are, but you're not really given this little puzzle or this little challenge that you sort of dive into and immerse yourself in and work through on your own, and that your own stuff sort of becomes part of the story. You really are like the experience kind of needs to give to you, and then you need to sort of work with it in order to unravel its experience. And it's kind of an adventure game in that sense. But it really is sort of a new AAA blockbuster adventure game thing. I don't know. It's something new-ish. And it's not necessarily bad. I kind of enjoyed it. I certainly played it all the way through to the end, and it was interesting. I mean, I think it hits these dramatic notes where they want you to spend time and have experiences with these characters, so that when they have a dramatic moment, you're more engaged in it than maybe you would be watching a movie. That this really is their goal, I think, and they're not completely unsuccessful in that. Some of this still feels a little. It feels experimental. It doesn't feel completely gelled. I did get pretty frustrated, even way late in the game, with like just the mechanics of doing some of this stuff. And it feels a bit quick time event-ish. In fact, I mean, you can call it a QTE game essentially, but I think they did work to streamline that process a bit, so it's not as frustrating as it could have been. But I still found times when I'm like, okay, you have to hit R1 and then hit L1 and then hit R2, and I'm like, left, right, what? I'm not good with that sometimes. So if you take that 1 second to think, then you screw it up. But again, there's that. And I don't want to go into this, what is a game, what isn't a game. As far as I'm concerned, you play this on a video game system, it's rendered in real time, it comes in a box on the shelf where other video games are. As far as I'm concerned, it's a video game. But it does kind of beg the question. I don't think there's an end game state. Like, even in a lot of visual novels, it depends on the thing, but you can actually get a bad ending at maybe sometimes a lot of points previous to any sort of real ending. It felt to me like you might not be able to get an ending state in Beyond Two Souls until you get to the end of the game. I could be wrong about that, and so if I am, I apologize, but it felt that way. And I think when you have an experience like that, what is a game that you can't get a game over state in? I'm not entirely sure. But it was interesting, and I think you had these dramatic moments. It did hit these dramatic notes, and the way that you sort of travel all around through Jodi's life, it feels kind of like the melancholy of Suzumiya Haruhi if you watched it in the broadcast order. It's mixed up and it's a little weird, but when you get used to it, it's all right. And I think it serves to give you information at points when that information will be the most dramatic, even if that information happened earlier in the story. So it's got that going for it, and I just think it was an interesting experiment. I would put it on par with The Last of Us in terms of this. I don't think that this thing has been perfected yet, but it's not an entirely uninteresting space, and it's not an uninteresting thing to play. I think especially Beyond Two Souls gave me it didn't require as much from me and as much of my time as The Last of Us did. And I kind of liked that, I think, in terms of just being able to finish the game. I rented it again this weekend, and I beat it. It was basically took me 2 weekends, and I did it all on Saturday this time. It didn't even take me into Sunday. A lot of that was really just because the story got pretty gripping towards the end, and I just wanted to play it. So anyway, I think I've gone on enough about this, but if you're interested in it, I would recommend definitely giving it a try. Seeing that whole ending roll at the end, I felt pretty guilty about renting it, to tell you the truth. I'm like, wow, I really, these people should probably get my money, because it was an experience that's worth something. And whether you rent it or whether you buy it, I think that's up to you. I haven't quite, like with The Last of Us, I didn't want to play through it again after I beat it once. But this, it sounds like there are some different endings. I haven't gotten any of them, so I don't know what it's like. I hear that it's, it's certainly not as many as the Heavy Rain, but I am a little curious, like especially if you go back and replay just a chapter. I do kind of want to know, well, what if I played this chapter a little differently? Or, what if, could I just go to the end and sort of, maybe get a couple different endings without too much trouble? I would do that. I mean, would I get a platinum on this? I don't know. But I'm tempted to put a little more time into the game. So anyway, those are my impressions of Beyond Two Souls. Interesting experiment. It didn't require so much of me that I felt taken advantage of, and it was a fun, interesting experience, especially just a nice way to kind of spend a Saturday. So that's about it. Hope that you enjoyed this, and hope you'll join me again next time for more video game related videos. Thanks for watching.